Hey guys, welcome back to 90 Feet from Home. Today we are going to talk about something that's timely and hopefully gets released before the actual time of the event, unlike my spring training video, which came out after spring training was over. Today we are going to talk about the trade deadline. The trade deadline falls on July 31st at 4 p.m. with very rare exceptions. At one point it was held on August 1st because July 31st was a Sunday and they didn't want the deadline to fall right while games were happening because that would have been a little bit awkward. Under normal circumstances, 4 p.m. Eastern on July 31st is considered to be the trade deadline. And this is considered the last point in the regular season where teams can conduct trades. Now, formerly, this was known as the non-waiver trade deadline because previously, before the 2019 season, there were actually two trade deadlines. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in detail a bit later on in the episode, but just so you know, you may hear things that reference multiple trade deadlines, and that was because before the 2019 season, there were in fact two trade deadlines. There was the July 31st non-waiver trade deadline, and then there was the August 31st waiver trade deadline. Basically what this means is that as of July 31st, 2019, no additional trades at all can take place between teams after that time. So basically, the trade deadline is kind of the last opportunity for teams that, especially contention teams that need to fill gaps in their lineup, have an opportunity to go out and get those missing pieces. And what will typically happen in this case is that the non-contention or teams that are towards the bottom end of the standings will look to move players to those teams looking to compete in the postseason. So say, for example, the New York Yankees were in dire need of a second baseman because theirs had been injured in the first half of the season. Now they know that they're looking to go into a contention run and hoping to compete in the postseason after September. So they're going to want to go ahead and find players that can fill those gaps of most need. So they may go to a team like, for example, the Detroit Tigers, who are lower in the standings, and say, look, we need your second baseman, and we're willing to trade 2 or 3 of our prospects in order to get that player. So then a trade would be completed between those two teams. The Yankees would get a player that they need for this season, and the Tigers would get prospects that they can hope to use competitively in future seasons. Now, if a team trades for a player whose contract ends at the end of that season, that player can often be referred to as a rental, meaning that the team is specifically hoping to use their talents just for the remainder of this season in the hopes that it will help their chances at a postseason run or when they get into the postseason, and they know that that player will no longer be with them after the end of that season. That player will become a free agent, and of course, either of those teams, the one that traded them or the one that traded for them, can make offers to them as a free agent, and they may continue to be with those teams, but typically they're going to go out and find another team at the end of that season that's going to pay them the most on the free agent market. But for the remainder of that season, that player will then assist the team to which they were traded, and really they're going to get their money's worth out of that situation if they can make it to the postseason and perhaps win the World Series because of picking up that quality player. Now, a note on that other trade deadline that I'd mentioned earlier. So the July 31st trade deadline, which is now the only trade deadline, used to be the non-waiver trade deadline. And the August 31st trade deadline was the waiver trade deadline. It's important because August 31st is the last day of the regular season that players are eligible for the postseason. Basically what this means is that any player has to be on the team by August 31st at midnight in order to be able to play on that team in the postseason. Now, this is specific to the 25-man roster, and I'll link that video up above if you're not sure. And basically, the August 31st midnight deadline was the last opportunity for teams to fill those gaps again and have that player be eligible for the postseason. Now, that's no longer in effect. Teams still can pick up players off the waivers, but they can't conduct trades. So I'm going to explain a little bit what those waivers mean, just so you understand what that kind of pickup means, just because it gives you kind of a little bit of insight into waivers, which we'll also discuss a little bit in the upcoming DFAs episode that I've got coming in the next next couple weeks. Basically, if a player was going to be moved between July 31st and August 31st, the team had to place them on waivers. And once a player was placed on waivers, that team then had 3 options if the player was claimed. The first option being that they could work out a trade deal with that other team within 48 hours. They could allow that player and their entire remaining contract to go to that other team without any trade at all. Or the third option being is that they could revoke the waiver, pull that player back, and make no trade at all. If they decided on this third option, they could then put that player on waivers again. However, this would be an irrevocable waiver, and if anybody made claims on that player after, they would have to do one of the first 2 options. They wouldn't be able to pull them back again. So they'd either need to trade or let that player go to that other team with no trade in place and just have them take the whole contract. So that is the waivers kind of aspect of things. And waivers do still exist. Like I said, we'll talk about them in the DFAs episode, but the trade option is no longer in place for teams between July 31st and the rest of the season. So yeah, hard and fast, July 31st at 4 p.m. No more trades can happen after that point. And that, guys, in a nutshell, is the trade deadline, which again, is July 31st. So stay tuned because there's usually some pretty exciting shuffles that go on leading up to that point. So if you liked the episode, give it a big thumbs up. Remember to hit that subscribe button down below. Ring the bell if you want to be notified every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday when a new episode goes live. And remember, you can follow me on social media. I'm at 90 Feet From Home on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we'll see you guys back next time and have an awesome day. Bye!